Under the scorching 100 degrees Fahrenheit heat of an empty parking lot, a teenage boy was rummaging through bottles and cans, desperately trying to earn enough money to buy medicine for his grandmother. Suddenly, he spotted a drunken man passed out inside a locked car. Panic shot through him. He begged for help, but everyone brushed him off. With no other choice, he grabbed a nearby rock, smashed the window and pulled the man out, only to be arrested moments later. He had no idea that this brave act would change the fate of both their lives, in a way no one could have ever imagined. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from. Subscribe and hype because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The summer sun hung like a furnace over Sierra Valley that Tuesday afternoon. By noon, the temperature had climbed to 105 degrees, and the streets seemed to exhale waves of shimmering heat. Most people stayed indoors, hiding behind air conditioners and drawn curtains. The few cars on the road moved slowly, their drivers squinting against the brutal glare. Kai Rivera pushed his rattling shopping cart along the empty sidewalk behind the Bright Point shopping center. The cart's wheels squeaked with every step, a sound he'd grown so used to that he barely heard it anymore. His clothes, a faded gray t-shirt and jeans worn thin at the knees, hung loose on his thin frame. His sneakers had holes near the toes, and he could feel the heat of the pavement through the worn soles. He was 17 years old, though most people guessed younger when they bothered to look at him at all. Most didn't. In the cart, a collection of plastic bottles and aluminum cans shifted and clinked as he walked. Kai had been collecting since dawn, working his way through the residential neighborhoods on the north side before the heat became unbearable. Now he was making one last sweep through the commercial district before heading to the recycling center. He paused at the corner, pulled out a water bottle from his pocket, half empty, lukewarm, and took a small sip. He needed to make it last. His shirt was already soaked with sweat, clinging to his back. Kai glanced up at the tall building across the street. Sierra Valley Medical Center, 5th floor, 3rd window from the left. That's where his grandmother was. Had been for 3 weeks now. Heart failure, the doctors said. She needed medication, the expensive kind, twice a day. Without it, her condition would deteriorate fast. "I'll get it today, Grandma," he whispered to himself. "I promise." The recycling center paid him $37 yesterday. He needed at least 18 more for this week's prescription. The math ran through his head constantly, like a prayer. $18, maybe 20 bottles. 30 cans. He could do it. Kai turned his cart toward the back parking lot of Bright Point. Most people parked in the covered garage, but there was an old auxiliary lot behind the building that some employees still used. People left things behind in parking lots, bottles, cans, sometimes loose change. It was worth checking. The lot was nearly empty in the midday heat. Just a handful of cars scattered across the cracked asphalt. No shade trees, no awnings, just raw concrete baking under the sun. Kai started down the first row, his eyes scanning the ground. He found a crushed soda can near a sedan and tossed it in his cart. Then an empty water bottle by a pickup truck. He moved methodically, checking around each vehicle. That's when he heard it. A sound, faint, coming from somewhere nearby. Kai stopped, tilting his head. There it was again, a dull thump, like something hitting a car seat from the inside. Then a low groan, barely audible. He turned slowly, trying to locate the source. His eyes settled on a black SUV parked slightly crooked about 3 spaces down. The windows were tinted dark, and the vehicle sat completely still in the blazing sun. Kai moved closer, leaving his cart behind. As he approached, he heard it again, that same weak sound, like someone trying to call out but unable to find their voice. He stepped up to the driver's side window and cupped his hands around his eyes, pressing close to the glass to see through the tint. At first, he couldn't make out much. Just shadows. But then his eyes adjusted. There was someone inside, a man, slumped over the steering wheel, his head tilted to one side. His arm hung limp toward the floor. He wasn't moving. Kai's heart began to beat faster. He knocked on the window. "Hey, sir, are you okay?" No response. He knocked harder, loud enough that his knuckles hurt. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man's body shifted slightly, and a barely audible moan escaped from inside the car. But his eyes didn't open. He didn't lift his head. Kai stepped back, his mind racing. Something was very wrong here. Kai moved around to the passenger side, then to the back windows, peering in from every angle. Through the tinted glass, he could make out more details now. The man's shirt was wrinkled and stained, it looked like vomit on the front and on the seat beside him. Some of it had dried in dark patches, some still glistened wet in the dim light. The man's face was flushed deep red, almost purple. His mouth hung open slightly, and even from outside, Kai could see his chest barely moving with shallow breaths. Kai knocked on the passenger window, harder this time. "Sir, wake up, you need to wake up." Nothing, not even a twitch. He tried the door handle. Locked. He moved to the back door, also locked. Every door was sealed tight. Kai pressed his palm flat against the driver's side window, trying to see better. The glass burned his skin. He yanked his hand back, staring at the red mark forming on his palm. If the outside was this hot, what was it like inside? His chest tightened. He pulled out his old flip phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The line rang twice before a calm voice answered. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man in a car, Kai said, his voice cracking. He's not moving. I think he's unconscious. Okay, can you tell me where you are? Behind Bright Point Shopping Center, the back parking lot. What's the condition of the person? Is he breathing? I think so, but barely. He slumped over the wheel. The car is off, no air conditioning. It's really hot. All right, I'm dispatching an ambulance now. Can you describe the vehicle? It's a black SUV, windows are tinted. The man looks really sick, his face is red and he's covered in sweat and vomit. There was typing on the other end. A pause that felt too long. Help is on the way. The nearest ambulance is currently responding to another heat emergency in the area. Estimated arrival time is 15 to 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Kai's voice rose, but he's dying. The car is like an oven. Sir, I need you to stay calm. Do not attempt to break into the vehicle. Emergency personnel will have the proper tools. Can you stay at the location? What if he doesn't have 20 minutes? The paramedics are coming as fast as they can. Please do not try to enter the vehicle yourself. That could create liability issues and potentially harm the person inside. Kai felt his throat tighten. Okay, stay on the line with me. I need to find help. Kai hung up. He shoved the phone in his pocket and ran toward the front of the building, his feet pounding against the hot pavement. There had to be someone, security, a manager, anyone. He found the security booth near the loading dock entrance. A small structure with tinted windows and a fan visible through the glass. Inside sat a heavy-set man in his 50s, a security uniform shirt, unbuttoned at the collar. He was reading something on his phone. Kai pounded on the door. The guard looked up, annoyed. He cracked the door open slightly. What? There's a man in the parking lot. Kai gasped. He's passed out in his car. I called 911, but they said 20 minutes. Can you help? Can you page someone to find the owner? Announce it over the speakers. The guard frowned, squinting at Kai. You already called 911. Yes, but then wait for them. He started to close the door. No, wait, please. Kai pushed his hand against the door frame. He's in a hot car. The engine's off, no AC, he's going to die if we don't do something. The guard's expression hardened. Listen, kid, you start breaking into people's cars around here, that's destruction of property. That's a lawsuit. You called emergency services, so let them handle it. But he doesn't have time. Look at me, I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm trying to save someone's life. I'm not getting the center involved in this. And neither should you, unless you want to get arrested. The guard's voice was firm. Now get away from my door before I call the cops on you for harassment. The door shut with a solid click. Kai heard the lock turn. He stood there for a moment, stunned, then pounded on the door again. Please, he's dying. No response. Through the tinted glass, he could see the guard had returned to his phone. Kai's hands curled into fists. His whole body shook, partly from exertion, partly from frustration, partly from fear. He turned and sprinted back to the parking lot. When he reached the SUV, he pressed his face against the glass again. The man had slumped lower, his head now resting heavily against the steering wheel. His skin looked even redder than before, and Kai couldn't tell if he was still breathing. Kai checked his phone. 5 minutes since he'd called 911. 15 more to go. Maybe longer. He looked around the lot desperately. Still empty. No one coming. No one caring. His breathing quickened. The sun beat down on him mercilessly, and for a moment, the edges of his vision went dark. He had to do something. But what? Kai moved to the back of the SUV and tried the rear hatch. Locked like everything else. He circled the vehicle again, checking every possible entry point. Nothing. He spotted a thin piece of metal rebar lying near the curb, probably left over from some construction work. He grabbed it and hurried back to the car. Kai tried wedging the metal into the doorframe at the driver's side, hoping to create enough space to reach the lock. He pushed and pried, the metal biting into his palms. The door frame held firm. The rebar bent slightly under the pressure, but the door didn't budge. Sweat dripped into his eyes. He wiped it away with his forearm and moved to the passenger side. Same result. The seal was too tight, the locks too secure. "Come on," he muttered through gritted teeth. "Come on." He tried the back door, working the rebar into the tiny gap at the top of the window. He pulled with all his strength. His arms trembled, his hands ached, the rebar slipped and clattered to the pavement. Kai picked it up and tried again, this time at a different angle. He wedged it in, pulled, twisted, the metal bent further. His hands were bleeding now from where the rough edges had cut into his skin. But the door stayed locked. He stepped back, breathing hard. His shirt was drenched, his vision swimming slightly from the heat and exertion. He checked his phone again. 8 minutes since the call, 12 more to go. Kai looked through the window at the man again. His chest was still moving, barely, but the rise and fall was so shallow it was almost imperceptible. The man's lips were cracked and dry, his skin an alarming shade of red. Kai pressed both palms against the window, trying to see better. The glass was scorching. He jerked his hands away, looking at the fresh red marks on his palms. If the outside was this hot, the inside had to be unbearable. Like an oven. Like a tomb. "Sir," Kai shouted through the glass, "can you hear me? You need to wake up, please." The man didn't respond. His body remained completely still except for those tiny labored breaths. Kai stepped back, his mind racing. He looked at his phone again. 9 minutes. The math was simple and terrible. If the ambulance took the full 20 minutes, and it might take longer, this man would be dead before they arrived. Heat stroke killed fast. Kai remembered that from somewhere, some health class years ago. The body's core temperature rises, the organs start to fail, the brain swells. Minutes matter, and they were running out of minutes. Kai looked around the parking lot one more time, hoping to see someone, anyone who could help. But the lot remained empty, shimmering with heat waves rising from the asphalt. He was alone. The man was alone, and time was running out. Kai's hands were shaking. He thought about his grandmother lying in that hospital bed, waiting for medicine he hadn't bought yet. If he got in trouble, if he got arrested for breaking into a car, who would take care of her? Who would make sure she got her medication? But if he walked away, if he just stood here and waited, this man would die. He looked at the man's face one more time, saw the shallow breathing, saw the bright red flush of heat stroke, saw a life hanging by a thread. 10 minutes gone, 10 more to wait. But Kai knew, deep in his gut, that 10 more minutes was too long. He clenched his jaw and started walking toward the edge of the parking lot, scanning the ground. Kai's eyes swept across the edge of the parking lot, where broken concrete jutted up from the curb. There, a chunk about the size of a brick, rough and heavy. He picked it up with both hands. The concrete was warm from the sun, solid and real in his grip. He walked back to the SUV, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he reached the car, he stood there, holding the concrete, staring at the dark-tinted window. His reflection stared back at him. A skinny kid with scared eyes and bloody hands. Once he did this, there was no going back. Someone would call the police. He'd be on camera, they'd arrest him. His grandmother would be alone. But if he didn't do this, Kai pressed his forehead against the hot glass, closing his eyes. The heat, the closed space. the feeling of being trapped, and suddenly he was 12 years old again. The warehouse had been abandoned for years, a huge brick building on the edge of town, where freight trains used to stop. All the kids from the group home knew about it. The staff told them never to go there. Which meant, of course, everyone went. Kai had gone with 3 older boys that summer afternoon. They were 14, 15, older enough to be scary when they wanted to be. They'd been playing a game, shoving the younger kids into empty rooms and holding the doors shut, laughing at the screams. When they'd grabbed Kai, he'd thought it was funny at first. Just roughhousing. Just a game. But then they shoved him into the storage closet at the back of the warehouse, and he heard the lock click. "Hey," Kai had laughed, pounding on the door. "Come on, let me out." Their laughter echoed from the other side. In a minute, one of them called. But a minute passed, then 5, then 10, and they didn't come back. The closet was tiny, maybe 4 feet by 4 feet. No windows, no light, just darkness pressing in from all sides, and heat. So much heat. The warehouse had been sitting in the summer sun all day, and that tiny closet had become an oven. The air was thick and stale, hard to breathe, each breath felt like inhaling fire. Kai had pounded on the door. "Let me out, this isn't funny anymore." No response, just silence from the other side. He pounded harder. "Please, let me out." His voice echoed in the tiny space, bouncing back at him. The fear started small, just a flutter in his chest. But it grew with every breath of hot stale air, with every second of darkness. With every moment of being trapped. He couldn't breathe, or it felt like he couldn't. The air was too hot, too thick. His chest tightened, his lungs burned. Kai screamed. He threw his whole body against the door. He clawed at the wood until his fingers bled. But the door was metal underneath the wood. Solid, unbreakable. He was going to die in there. He was sure of it. He was going to die in the dark, and the heat, and no one would find him. Until it was too late. His vision went spotty, his legs gave out. He slumped against the door, gasping, tears streaming down his face. He didn't know how long he was in there. It felt like hours, could have been 30 minutes. But eventually he heard a voice. "Kai, Kai baby, where are you?" His grandmother, she'd come looking when he didn't come home for dinner. "Here," he croaked, barely able to make a sound. "I'm here." He heard her footsteps running. Heard her yelling at someone to help her break the lock. The door burst open, and cool evening air rushed in. Kai fell forward into his grandmother's arms, sobbing, gasping, his whole body shaking. "Oh baby, oh my baby," she cried, holding him tight. "It's okay, you're okay now." But Kai wasn't okay, not for weeks after. He woke up screaming in the middle of the night, convinced he was back in that closet. He couldn't stand small spaces, couldn't stand the heat. His grandmother sat with him through every nightmare. She held him when he cried. She promised him he was safe, and one night, after a particularly bad dream, she'd taken his face in her hands and looked him straight in the eyes. "Listen to me, Kai, if you ever see someone trapped like you were, if you ever see someone who can't get out, who can't breathe, you help them. You don't wait for someone else to do it. You don't ask permission, you just help. Do you understand me?" Kai had nodded, not really understanding. Because sometimes his grandmother continued, her voice fierce, "You're the only one who can." And doing nothing, standing by and watching someone suffer when you could help, that's worse than being scared. "Do you hear me?" "Yes, Grandma." "Good, because I didn't raise you to stand by and do nothing." Kai's eyes snapped open. He was back in the parking lot, holding the chunk of concrete, staring at his reflection in the dark window. His grandmother's words echoed in his head. "You don't wait for someone else to do it. You just help." He looked at the man slumped over the wheel, saw the red face, the shallow breathing, the closed space, the unbearable heat. He thought about that closet, about the suffocating darkness, about thinking he was going to die alone. This man was in that closet right now, and Kai was the only one standing outside the door. He checked his phone one more time. 11 minutes since the call, 9 more to go. Maybe longer, 9 minutes this man might not have. Kai thought about his grandmother in that hospital bed. About the medication she needed, about what would happen if he got arrested today. But then he thought about her voice, "You just help." His hands stopped shaking, he raised the concrete above his head, took a breath, and made his choice. "I'm sorry," he whispered to himself, to the man, to his grandmother, to whoever might be listening. He brought the concrete down with all his strength. The first impact sent cracked spider webbing across the window. The second impact shattered it completely. Glass exploded inward, a cascade of glittering fragments raining down onto the back seat. The sound was deafening, a violent crack that echoed across the empty parking lot. Kai dropped the concrete, it hit the pavement with a heavy thud. For a moment he just stood there, staring at the jagged hole where the window had been, his ears ringing. Then he moved. He reached through carefully, feeling the heat blast out at him like opening an oven door. Shards of glass crunched under his palm. He felt a sharp sting as a piece sliced into his forearm, but he didn't stop. His fingers found the lock button. He pressed it, click, the doors unlocked. Kai pulled his arm back, blood was dripping down to his elbow now, and yanked open the back door. The smell hit him immediately. Vomit and sweat and something sour and wrong. He stumbled to the front door, and pulled it open. A wave of heat poured out, so intense it took his breath away. The man was still slumped over the wheel, unmoving. "Okay," Kai said, his voice shaking. "Okay, I've got you." He reached in and unbuckled the seatbelt. Then he grabbed the man under the arms and pulled. The man was heavy, much heavier than Kai had expected. Pure dead weight. Kai's thin arms strained, his feet slipping on the hot pavement. "Come on," he grunted, pulling harder. The man's body shifted, sliding toward the door. His feet caught on the frame. Kai adjusted his grip, braced his legs, and pulled again with everything he had. The man came free, tumbling out of the car. Kai tried to lower him gently, but his arms gave out at the last second. The man's shoulder hit the pavement with a dull thump. "Sorry," Kai gasped. "I'm sorry." He grabbed the man under the arms again, and dragged him across the parking lot, away from the car, toward a narrow strip of shade along the building's wall. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Kai laid him down on his back as gently as he could. The man's face was bright red, his skin burning hot to the touch. His breathing was so shallow it was barely visible. Kai pulled out his empty water bottle, then cursed. He looked around desperately. There, near a drainage pipe along the wall, a small puddle of water, probably runoff from the building's air conditioning unit. It wasn't clean, but it was all he had. Kai ran over, filled the bottle halfway, and rushed back. He poured a little onto his hand and dabbed it on the man's forehead, his neck, his wrists, anywhere he could reach. "Stay with me," Kai said, his voice cracking. "Help's coming. Just hold on." The man's eyelids fluttered, a weak groan escaped his lips. "That's good," Kai said, "that's good, keep breathing." And then he heard voices. Kai looked up. Two people were hurrying across the parking lot, from the direction of the main building, a man in business casual and a woman in a store uniform. The man had his phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, there's someone on the ground," the man was saying, "and a kid. The car windows smashed. You better send someone fast." The woman stopped a few feet away, her eyes going wide as she took in the scene, the broken window, the glass scattered everywhere. Kai kneeling beside the unconscious man, his hands covered in blood. "Oh my God," she said. "What did you do?" Kai opened his mouth to explain. "He was trapped, he was dying. I had to, you broke into his car." The woman pulled out her phone. "I called 911 first, but they said 20 minutes, and he didn't have." "You destroyed someone's property," the man said, still on his phone. "Yeah, the kid's still here." "No, he's not running. Just hurry." Kai's stomach dropped. "I was trying to save him." But the way they were looking at him, the suspicion, the judgment, told him everything he needed to know. They didn't see someone who just saved a life, they saw a criminal. The wail of sirens cut through the afternoon heat. Kai stayed kneeling beside the man, his hands still damp from the water he'd used to cool the man's skin. His own hands were shaking, from adrenaline, from fear, from the sudden realization of what he'd done. The two bystanders stood several feet away, watching him like he might bolt at any second. The man with the phone kept glancing between Kai and the shattered window. The woman had her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Within minutes, 2 police cruisers pulled into the lot, lights flashing red and blue. An ambulance followed close behind. The sirens went silent as they parked, but the lights kept spinning. 2 officers stepped out of the first cruiser. One was older, maybe 50, with graying hair and a thick mustache. The other was younger, stockier, with sharp eyes that immediately locked onto Kai. The older officer approached first, his hand resting casually near his belt. "Who called this in?" The business casual man stepped forward. "I did. I heard glass breaking and came out to see what was going on. That kid smashed the window." He pointed at Kai. The officer's gaze shifted to Kai. "That true, son?" Kai nodded quickly. "Yes, but I had to. He was dying." "Stay right there," the officer said, holding up a hand. 2 paramedics rushed past them with a stretcher and medical kit. They knelt beside the man, immediately checking his vitals. "Pulse is weak," one paramedic said, pressing 2 fingers against the man's neck. "Breathing shallow, skin's hot and dry." She pulled out a thermometer and checked his temperature. "Core temp is way too high. This is heat stroke." The second paramedic was already pulling out IV equipment. "How long's he been out here?" "I don't know," Kai said. "I found him in the car, maybe 15 minutes ago. He was already unconscious." The younger officer stepped closer to Kai. "And you decided to break his window?" "He was locked inside with no air conditioning." Kai's voice rose. "It's over 100 degrees. I called 911, but they said it would take 20 minutes. I didn't think he had that long." "So you took it upon yourself to destroy someone's property?" "I was trying to save his life." "That's not for you to decide," the officer said coldly. The first paramedic looked up from the man. Another 10-15 minutes in that heat, and he'd be gone. Organs would have started shutting down. "Who got him out of the car?" the second paramedic asked. The older officer nodded toward Kai. "Kid says he did." The paramedic looked at Kai, her expression shifting. "You pulled him out?" "Yes, ma'am." She glanced at the officer. "Then the kid saved his life." The younger officer's jaw tightened. "Or the kid's the reason he's hurt in the first place. He was unconscious in a locked car, in 100-degree heat," the paramedic said flatly. "The kid didn't put him there. The kid got him out." The officer didn't respond. The paramedics worked quickly, hooking the man up to an IV, checking his pupils, stabilizing him. They lifted him onto the stretcher and wheeled him toward the ambulance. "Is he going to be okay?" Kai asked. "We'll know more at the hospital," the first paramedic said. Then she looked at Kai more closely, noticing the blood on his arms. "You're bleeding, you should get that checked." "I'm fine, those cuts need cleaning. Glass cuts can get infected. I'll take care of it later." The paramedics loaded the man into the ambulance. The doors slammed shut, and the vehicle pulled away, sirens blaring. Kai watched it go, a knot of relief and dread tangled in his chest. The man was alive. That was what mattered. But the officers weren't done with him. "What's your name?" the older officer asked. "Kai Rivera." "How old are you?" 17. "Where do you live?" Kai hesitated. He couldn't exactly tell them he slept in an abandoned building. "Around." The younger officer's eyes narrowed. "Around where?" "Just, around." "You got any ID?" Kai shook his head. "Any family we can call?" Kai thought about his grandmother lying in that hospital bed. She couldn't handle this stress. She didn't need to know he'd been detained by police. "No," he said quietly. The officers exchanged a look. "Turn around," the younger officer said. "Hands behind your back." "What? Why?" "You're being detained for destruction of property and possible theft." "I didn't steal anything." "Turn around." Now, Kai's heart hammered. He turned slowly and felt the officer grab his wrist, pulling it behind his back. The cold metal of handcuffs clicked around one wrist, then the other. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer said. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The words blurred together. Kai stopped listening. He stared at the broken SUV, at the glass glittering on the pavement, at the puddle of water still sitting beside the shattered window. He'd saved a man's life. And now he was being arrested for it. The older officer opened the back door of the patrol car. "Watch your head." Kai ducked and slid into the back seat. The door slammed shut. Through the window he could see the woman in the store uniform holding up her phone recording. The business casual man was talking to the other officer, gesturing animatedly. Kai closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the seat. All he could think about was his grandmother. About the medication she needed. About the prescription he was supposed to pick up today. He checked the time on the cruiser's dashboard through the metal grating. 2:30 in the afternoon. The pharmacy closed at 6. He had 3.5 hours to get out of here, get to the recycling center, get money and make it to the hospital. 3.5 hours that were slipping away with every passing minute. The police station was frigid. After the brutal heat outside, the air-conditioned interior felt like stepping into a freezer. Kai's sweat-soaked shirt clung to his skin, making him shiver as the officers led him through the front desk area and into a small interrogation room. The room was bare except for a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 chairs. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh white glow. "Sit." The younger officer, his name tag read Dawson, said, gesturing to one of the chairs. Kai sat. The handcuffs were still on, his wrists cuffed behind his back. The position made his shoulders ache. The older officer, Brennan, leaned against the wall while Dawson sat across from Kai, pulling out a notepad. "Let's start from the beginning," Dawson said. "What were you doing in that parking lot?" "Collecting bottles and cans for recycling." "You make money doing that?" "A little." "Enough." "Enough for what?" Kai hesitated. "Medicine. For my grandmother." Dawson wrote something down. "And you just happened to see the guy in the car." "I heard something, like someone hitting the inside of the car. So I went to check." "And what did you see?" "A man slumped over the steering wheel. Not moving. I knocked on the window but he didn't wake up." "So you called 911? "Yes. Around 12:30. "And what did they tell you?" "That an ambulance was coming, but it would take 15 to 20 minutes. There was another heat emergency somewhere else." Dawson tapped his pen against the notepad. "And you didn't think that was fast enough?" "He was dying," Kai said, his voice rising. His face was bright red. He wasn't responding. The car was off. No AC, no ventilation, just sitting in the sun like an oven. "So you decided to break the window?" "Not right away. I tried everything else first." "Like what?" "I tried to open the doors. All of them. They were locked. I found a piece of metal and tried to pry them open. It didn't work. I went to the security guard and asked him to help. He refused." Dawson raised an eyebrow. "The guard refused to help?" "He said it wasn't his problem. Said I'd get in trouble if I broke into the car. Told me to wait for the ambulance." "Smart advice." Kai's jaw tightened. "The man would be dead if I'd taken that advice." "That's not your call to make," Dawson said. "You're not a paramedic. You're not a doctor. You're a kid with no training who decided to take the law into his own hands." "I decided to save someone's life. By committing a crime. By doing what anyone with a conscience would do." Dawson leaned back in his chair, studying Kai. "You know that window's going to cost hundreds of dollars to replace, right? Maybe more for a car like that. Who do you think pays for that?" "I don't know. Me, I guess. If I have to." "With what money?" "You just said you barely scraped together enough for medicine." Kai didn't answer. "Here's what I think happened," Dawson continued. "I think you saw an expensive car with tinted windows. Thought it might have valuables inside. You smashed the window and when you realized someone was in there you panicked. So you made up this whole hero story to cover yourself." "That's not what happened," Kai said, his voice shaking with anger. "Then why were you really there? That parking lot's not exactly prime territory for finding cans and bottles. People leave things everywhere. I check wherever I can." "Sure. Or you were casing cars." "I wasn't casing anything. I was trying to help someone." Brennan, who'd been silent until now, pushed off the wall. "Let's take a break. I need to make some calls." He left the room. Dawson followed. Kai was alone. He sat there handcuffed to the chair, staring at the scratched metal table. His cuts had stopped bleeding but they throbbed. His shoulders ached from the awkward position. His head pounded from dehydration and stress. But more than anything his chest hurt, because all he could think about was his grandmother. About the medication she needed. About the clock ticking down. He looked at the clock on the wall, 3:15. Less than 3 hours until the pharmacy closed. Brennan returned 45 minutes later. Dawson was with him, but his expression had changed. Less hostile. More uncertain. "We talked to the hospital," Brennan said, sitting down across from Kai. "The guy you pulled out, his name's Ethan Hale. Doctors confirmed severe heat stroke. Core temperature was 106 degrees. They said if he'd stayed in that car another 10-15 minutes he'd likely be dead." Kai felt a flicker of hope. "So you believe me?" "We also checked the car," Brennan continued. "No signs of forced entry except the window you broke. Nothing stolen. Wallet, phone, keys, all still there. Because I wasn't trying to steal anything." Dawson crossed his arms. "Doesn't change the fact that you destroyed property." "Destroyed property?" Kai's voice rose. "I saved a life. You broke a window without authorization." He was dying. "What was I supposed to do? Stand there and watch?" "You were supposed to wait for emergency services. They were too slow." Kai was shouting now, his voice echoing in the small room. "They would have been too late. That man is alive because I didn't wait, because I didn't follow your stupid rules." The room went silent. Brennan sighed. "Look, kid, technically what you did was destruction of property. We could charge you. But given the circumstances, and the fact that you did save his life, we're not going to." Kai's head snapped up. "Really? Yeah. You're free to go. Can I go now?" "Hold on. We might need a statement later depending on what Mr. Hale says when he's more stable. So don't leave town." Kai almost laughed. As if he had anywhere to go. Brennan stood and unlocked the handcuffs. Kai's wrists were raw and red where the metal had dug in. "Get those cuts looked at," Brennan said. "And kid, next time wait for the professionals." Kai rubbed his wrists and stood. "If there's a next time, I'll do exactly what I did today." He walked out before either officer could respond. By the time Kai made it outside, it was 4:30. He'd been in the police station for 2 hours. 2 hours he didn't have. He started running toward the recycling center, but he already knew it was pointless. They closed at 5. Even if he ran the whole way, he'd never make it in time with his cart full of cans. His cart, he'd left it in the parking lot. It was probably gone by now. And even if it wasn't, all his work from this morning, all those cans and bottles wouldn't be enough. Kai slowed to a walk, his chest heaving. He checked his pockets. $37 from yesterday. Not enough for the prescription. Not even close. He walked the rest of the way to the hospital, his legs heavy with exhaustion and dread. When he reached the 5th floor, he found the nurse at the station. She looked up, and her expression shifted to concern. "Kai, are you all right? You're bleeding." "I'm fine. Is my grandma okay?" The nurse's face fell. "Honey, we tried calling you, but your phone went to voicemail. Your grandmother needed her medication this afternoon. And when you didn't show up with it, we had to give her an emergency dose from our supply." Kai's stomach dropped. "Is she okay?" "She's stable now. But the delay in her regular medication caused her heart rhythm to become irregular. We had to give her IV medication to stabilize her. She's resting, but it was close. Kai. Really close." Kai felt like he couldn't breathe. "Can I see her?" "Of course. But she's asleep. She's been through a lot today." Kai walked to room 512 on numb legs. His grandmother looked so small in the hospital bed. An oxygen mask covered her face. An IV ran from her arm to a bag hanging on a pole. Her chest rose and fell with slow, labored breaths. Kai pulled a chair up beside her bed and took her hand gently. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I tried. I really tried. But I couldn't. I couldn't get here in time." She didn't respond. Didn't open her eyes. Kai sat there holding her hand, tears streaming down his face. He'd saved a stranger's life today. But he'd almost lost the person who mattered most. Ethan Hale woke up to the sound of beeping monitors and the antiseptic smell of hospital air. His head throbbed. His mouth felt like sandpaper. Every muscle in his body ached. He tried to sit up, but a hand gently pushed him back down. Easy there, a nurse said. You've been through a lot. Just rest. What? Where am I? Sierra Valley Medical Center. You were brought in with severe heat stroke. You're lucky to be alive. Lucky. Ethan almost laughed at that. He didn't feel lucky. He felt like garbage. The nurse checked his IV and made notes on a tablet. Your wife is on her way. The doctor will be in shortly to talk to you. Wife, ex-wife. But Ethan didn't correct her. After the nurse left, Ethan closed his eyes and tried to remember what had happened. He remembered the bar, the darkness of it, the wood grain of the counter where his whiskey sat. He'd lost count after the fourth or fifth glass. He remembered stumbling out to his car. The parking lot had been bright and hot, the sun beating down mercilessly. He'd gotten into the driver's seat, thinking he'd just sit for a minute, just rest before driving home. And then, nothing, just black. But before that, before the bar, before the drinking, there'd been an envelope on his kitchen table. Divorce papers, final and official, 7 years of marriage gone, signed away with a few strokes of a pen. It hadn't always been like this. Ethan remembered the beginning, the good years. He'd met Vanessa at an architecture convention 10 years ago. She'd been working for a rival firm, and they'd ended up sitting next to each other during a panel discussion on sustainable design. By the end of the hour, they were finishing each other's sentences. They got married a year later. 2 years after that, they'd quit their jobs and started their own firm. It was crazy and terrifying and perfect. They worked out of a cramped office above a dry cleaner, eating instant noodles and staying up until 3 in the morning drafting designs. Their first big contract came after 6 months of hustling. A residential development. Nothing glamorous, but it was steady work. It paid the bills. It let them hire 2 employees and move into a real office. When Leo was born, Ethan had held his tiny son and sworn he'd build something great. Something to be proud of. Something to pass down. For a while it had worked. The firm grew. They landed bigger contracts. Ethan's designs won awards, but success was fragile. The decline started 2 years ago. A major contract fell through when the developer went bankrupt. Then another client sued over a design flaw that wasn't even their fault, but the legal fees drained their savings anyway. Employees started leaving. Contracts dried up. Bills piled up. Ethan had thrown himself into the work, trying to fix it. He stayed at the office until midnight, skipped meals, ignored phone calls. He snapped at Vanessa when she suggested taking a break. He yelled at Leo for being too loud while he was trying to work. The stress was crushing. It sat on his chest like a weight, making it hard to breathe. So he started drinking. Just a glass of wine with dinner at first, then 2 glasses, then a bottle, then whiskey after work, then whiskey during work. Vanessa had tried to talk to him, begged him to see a therapist, to take a vacation, to just slow down for a minute. But Ethan couldn't. If he stopped, even for a second, he'd have to face the truth. He was failing. His company was failing. He was failing his wife and his son and everyone who'd believed in him. The drinking got worse. The fights got louder. Leo started crying when Ethan came home. And then, 6 months ago, Vanessa moved out, took Leo with her. Ethan had told himself it was temporary. She just needed space. She'd come back. But she didn't. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks ago. And this morning, or was it yesterday? Ethan had lost track. He'd signed them. Irreconcilable differences. Sole custody to Vanessa. Division of assets. Ethan had signed his name on every line, his hand shaking. Then he'd gone to the bar. The hospital room door opened. Vanessa stood in the doorway. She looked tired, older than he remembered. There were dark circles under her eyes. Ethan, she said quietly. Hey. She didn't sit down. She just stood there, arms crossed, looking at him like he was a stranger. The doctor said you almost died. I know, you got drunk and passed out in your car in 100-degree heat. Do you have any idea how insane that is? Ethan didn't answer. You could have died, Ethan. You almost did. Some kid had to break your window and pull you out. A kid. I didn't ask anyone to. I don't care what you asked for. Her voice rose. You're killing yourself. Slowly, methodically, you're drinking yourself to death. And I can't watch it anymore. Vanessa, Leo asked about you yesterday, she said, her voice breaking. He asked when you were coming back. You know what I told him? I told him I didn't know, because I don't, Ethan. I don't know who you are anymore. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. I loved you, Vanessa continued. I loved the man I married. The man who dreamed big and worked hard and made me laugh. But that man's gone, and I can't keep waiting for him to come back. She wiped her eyes. Get help, Ethan. Please, if not for me then for Leo. Because right now he's growing up thinking his father doesn't care about him. And that's not fair to him. She turned and walked out. The door closed softly behind her. Ethan lay there staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down his face. And for the first time in months, he felt something other than numbness. He felt shame. Kai was released from the police station at 4:45. By the time he walked to the hospital, it was past 5:30. The pharmacy had closed. The recycling center had closed. He'd failed. He sat with his grandmother for hours, watching her sleep, holding her hand. The nurse had explained what happened, how the delay in medication had caused complications, how they'd had to intervene, how close it had been. Kai felt the guilt like a physical weight on his chest. Around 7 o'clock, his grandmother's eyes fluttered open. She saw him sitting there and squeezed his hand weakly. Kai, she whispered through the oxygen mask. I'm here, Grandma. I'm so sorry. I tried to get your medicine, but she shook her head slightly. Chess. I'm okay, but you almost weren't, because of me, because of a bad day, she corrected. Tell me what happened. So Kai told her, about the man in the car, about breaking the window, about being arrested, about missing the pharmacy. When he finished, his grandmother was quiet for a long moment. You did the right thing, she said finally, but you almost died, and that man would have definitely died if you hadn't helped him. She squeezed his hand again. I'm proud of you. Kai's throat tightened. I need to get you something to eat, real food, not this hospital stuff. I'm not hungry, baby. You need to eat. She smiled faintly. Okay, if it makes you feel better. Kai went down to the hospital cafeteria. With the last few dollars in his pocket, he bought a small container of soup and a piece of bread. It wasn't much, but it was something. When he came back, he helped his grandmother sit up and fed her slowly, one spoonful at a time. She took small bites, chewing carefully. This is good, she said, though they both knew it wasn't. It's terrible, Kai said, but it's all they had. She chuckled, which turned into a cough. Kai waited until she caught her breath, then gave her another spoonful. They sat like that for a while, comfortable in the quiet. It reminded Kai of better times. Before the hospital, before the medication. When it was just the two of them in their small apartment, eating dinner and talking about the day. I love you, Grandma, Kai said. I love you too, baby, more than anything. After his grandmother fell asleep again, Kai walked down to the main floor. He was exhausted, his body aching from the day, his cuts stung, his wrists hurt from the handcuffs. He wandered through the quiet hallways, not sure where he was going, just needing to move. That's when he passed the waiting area near the emergency department entrance, and froze. Because sitting on a bench near the windows, was the man from the car. He looked rough, his hair was messy, he wore a hospital gown under a thin jacket, someone must have given him, and in his hand was a small bottle, whiskey. Kai's blood ran cold. The man Ethan was drinking. A woman stood in front of him. Vanessa, though Kai didn't know her name yet. She was crying, her voice raised. Are you serious right now? You're drinking here, after everything? Ethan didn't look at her, just stared at the bottle in his hands. You almost died today, Ethan. Someone saved your life, and you're sitting here drinking like it meant nothing. I didn't ask to be saved, Ethan said quietly. That's not the point. The point is someone cared enough to help you, when you clearly don't care about helping yourself. Kai's hands clenched into fists. He watched as Vanessa tried to reason with Ethan, watched as Ethan took another drink, watched as she finally gave up and walked away, sobbing. And something inside Kai snapped. He walked over to the bench. Ethan didn't notice him at first. You're still drinking, Kai said. Ethan looked up, startled. Recognition flickered across his face. "Oh, you're thanks, I guess. For earlier, thanks." Kai's voice was shaking with anger. "That's all you have to say." Ethan shrugged. "What do you want me to say? I want you to explain why you're sitting here drinking after you almost died from being drunk. It's none of your business." Kai stepped closer. "I got arrested because of you. I spent hours in a police station answering questions about why I saved your life. My grandmother almost died today because I couldn't get her medication, because I was too busy trying to save you. And now you're sitting here acting like none of it matters." Ethan looked down at the bottle in his hands. "I didn't ask you to save me," he said again. "You were dying." "Maybe I wanted to," Ethan said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Kai stared at him, his anger shifting to something else. Disbelief, disgust. "You're pathetic," Kai said. Ethan flinched but didn't respond. "You know what?" Kai continued, his voice rising. "I don't care if you want to throw your life away. That's your choice. But don't make other people pay for it. Don't make me pay for it. Don't make your wife pay for it. Don't make your kid pay for it." He turned and walked away, his whole body shaking with rage. Behind him Ethan sat in silence, staring at the bottle in his hands. Kai turned and walked away, his whole body shaking with rage and exhaustion. He didn't look back. He made it to the stairwell before his legs gave out. He sat down hard on the bottom step, his vision blurred with tears. He'd risked everything to save that man. Everything. And the man didn't even care. Kai wiped his eyes roughly with the back of his hand. His cuts stung. His wrists ached where the handcuffs had been. His whole body felt like it was breaking down. But he couldn't fall apart. Not yet. His grandmother needed him. He stood up slowly and climbed the stairs to the 5th floor, each step heavier than the last. Behind him in the waiting area, Ethan sat frozen on the bench. The kid's words echoed in his head. "You're pathetic. Don't make other people pay for it. Don't make your wife pay for it. Don't make your kid pay for it." Ethan looked down at the bottle of whiskey in his hands, half empty. The liquid inside caught the fluorescent light, amber and familiar. How many times had he sat like this, holding a bottle, telling himself it would make things better, knowing it wouldn't? He thought about Vanessa's face, the disappointment, the exhaustion. He thought about Leo asking when Daddy was coming home. He thought about that kid, Kai, bleeding and angry, and so young, telling him he was wasting his life. Ethan's hands trembled. He stood up slowly and walked to the trash can near the vending machines. He held the bottle over it for a long moment. Then he let it drop. The bottle hit the bottom of the can with a dull thud. Ethan stood there staring at it. His hands were empty now. They felt strange, too light. He turned away and started walking, not sure where he was going, just knowing he couldn't sit still anymore. He wandered through the quiet hospital hallways. Most of the lights were dimmed for the evening. A few nurses moved quietly between rooms. Somewhere, a monitor beeped steadily. Ethan found himself on the 5th floor. He didn't remember taking the elevator, but here he was. He walked past room after room, hearing the quiet sounds of people sleeping, breathing, healing. And then he passed a room with the door half open, and he stopped, because inside he could see them. The kid Kai was sitting in a chair pulled close to the bed. An elderly woman lay propped up against pillows, an oxygen tube under her nose. She looked tired but alert, smiling at something Kai had just said. Kai was holding a small foam container from the hospital cafeteria. He scooped up a spoonful of soup, blew on it gently to cool it, then lifted it to his grandmother's mouth. She took a small sip and smiled. "That's terrible soup," she said, her voice weak but warm. "I know," Kai said, laughing softly. "It's the worst, but it's all they had downstairs." "You're a good boy," his grandmother said. "You always say that, because it's always true." Kai scooped up another spoonful, blew on it, fed it to her carefully. There was so much love in that simple gesture, so much patience, so much care. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He thought about the last time he'd sat with Leo, really sat with him, not just in the same room, but present, listening, caring about what his son was saying. He couldn't remember. He thought about the last time he told Vanessa he appreciated everything she'd done for him. The sacrifices she'd made, the patience she'd shown. He couldn't remember that either. He'd been so consumed by his own failures, so lost in his own pain, that he'd forgotten about the people who actually mattered. And now they were gone. But this kid, this homeless, exhausted, bleeding kid, had nothing. No home, no money, no future. But he had something Ethan had thrown away. He had love. He had someone to care for. He had purpose. Ethan watched as Kai wiped a drop of soup from his grandmother's chin with a napkin. So gentle, so careful. "I love you, Grandma," Kai said quietly. "I love you too, baby," she whispered. "More than anything in this world." Ethan felt tears streaming down his face. He'd almost died today. Some kid had broken a window and pulled him out of a burning car to save his life, and his first instinct had been to drink, to waste the second chance he'd been given. But watching this boy feed his grandmother hospital soup like it was the most important thing in the world, Ethan understood something. Life wasn't about success or failure. It wasn't about money or careers or keeping up appearances. It was about this simple act of love, this choosing to show up for someone, even when you had nothing left to give. Ethan turned away from the door, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He walked to the end of the hallway and leaned against the wall, letting himself cry. And for the first time in months he made a decision. He was going to get help, real help. He was going to fight for his life, not because he deserved it, but because other people had fought for it too. That kid had fought for it, had risked everything for it. The least Ethan could do was not waste it. He pulled out his phone, wiped his eyes and searched for help. Tomorrow he would start over. Tonight he would just try to believe that starting over was possible. Inside room 512, Kai finished feeding his grandmother and set the empty container aside. "You should rest now," he said. "You should too," his grandmother said. "You look exhausted." "I'm okay." She reached for his hand. "What you did today, saving that man, that was brave. I'm proud of you." He didn't even care, Grandma. He was drinking again, like none of it mattered. "Maybe it didn't matter to him yet," she said. "But someday it will. You planted a seed today, baby. Sometimes it takes time for seeds to grow." Kai didn't respond. He just held her hand. "Get some rest," she said. "Tomorrow's a new day." Kai nodded and leaned down to kiss her forehead. Then he sat back in the chair, closed his eyes and finally let himself rest. Ethan walked out of the hospital and into the cool evening air. For the first time in months his head felt clear. Not good, not happy, but clear. He thought about the kid, about the anger in his voice, about the way he'd fed his grandmother so gently, so patiently, about the way he'd risked everything, his freedom, his grandmother's health, to save a stranger. Ethan had spent months feeling sorry for himself, drowning in self-pity and whiskey, convinced he'd lost everything. But that kid had less than nothing. No home, no money, no future. And yet he still chose to help, still chose to care. Ethan walked home through the empty streets. When he got to his apartment, he went straight to the cabinet above the refrigerator where he kept his bottles. He took them all out. 3 bottles of whiskey, 1 vodka, 2 bottles of wine. He opened each one and poured them down the kitchen sink. The smell made his stomach turn. He wanted to stop, wanted to save just 1 bottle, just in case, but he didn't. He poured them all out, watching the amber and clear liquid swirl down the drain. When he was done he threw the empty bottles in the recycling bin, and sat down at his kitchen table. He pulled out his phone and searched alcohol treatment near me. Several results came up. He clicked on the first one, Recovery First Center. He read through their website, outpatient programs, group therapy, individual counseling, medical support. They had a 24-hour intake line. Ethan's finger hovered over the call button. He thought about Vanessa, about Leo, about the kid who'd pulled him out of that car. He pressed the button. The phone rang twice. Recovery First Center, this is Dana. How can I help you? Ethan opened his mouth. For a moment no words came out. Hello, are you there? Yeah, Ethan said, his voice rough. I'm here. I need help. The first few weeks were brutal. Ethan attended group therapy sessions 3 times a week. He sat in a circle with strangers, listening to stories that sounded too much like his own. Addiction, failure, loss. He met with a counselor named Marcus twice a week for individual sessions. They talked about things Ethan had buried for years. His fear of failure, his need for control, his inability to ask for help. Why did you start drinking? Marcus asked during one session. To forget, Ethan said. Forget what? That I was failing, that I'd lost everything. But you hadn't lost everything, Marcus said. You still had your wife, your son, your health. You had opportunities to rebuild. I couldn't see that then. Can you see it now? Ethan thought about that. I'm starting to. The cravings were the worst part. They came in waves, sudden and overwhelming. His body screamed for alcohol, convinced it needed it to function. But Ethan didn't drink. He went to AA meetings at a church downtown. He called his sponsor when the cravings got bad. He took medication that helped reduce the urge to drink. And slowly, painfully, he started to feel like himself again. Not the self he'd been 2 years ago when everything was falling apart, but the self he'd been before that. The self who'd loved his work, who'd laughed with his wife, who'd played with his son. 4 weeks into his sobriety, Ethan called Vanessa. Hey, he said, when she answered. There was a long pause. Hey, I wanted to let you know I've been going to treatment. Outpatient therapy 3 times a week, individual counseling, AA meetings. Vanessa didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was careful. How long? A month now. That's good, Ethan. I know I've said I'd get help before. I know I've let you down, but this time is different. I'm doing the work. I'm staying sober. Why now? She asked quietly. What changed? Ethan thought about the parking lot, the heat, the darkness, the kid's face pressed against the glass. I met someone who made me realize I've been wasting my life. Someone who showed me what it means to care about something bigger than yourself. Vanessa was quiet for a long time. I don't know if I can trust you again. I know, Ethan said. I don't expect you to. Not yet. But I want to try. I want to earn it back. What about Leo? I want to see him, when he's ready, when you think it's okay. I don't want to push, but I want him to know I'm trying. Another long pause. I'll talk to him, but I'm not making any promises. That's all I'm asking for. 5 weeks into sobriety, Ethan got a text from Vanessa. Leo wants to see you. Saturday at 2, the park. Ethan stared at the message, his hands shaking. Saturday came. Ethan showed up 20 minutes early, sitting on a bench near the playground. When Vanessa's car pulled up, his heart hammered in his chest. Leo climbed out of the back seat. He was bigger than Ethan remembered. Had it really only been 6 months? Hey buddy, Ethan said, kneeling down. Leo didn't move. He looked at his mom. Vanessa nodded gently. Leo took a tentative step forward, then another. Then he ran into Ethan's arms. Ethan held him tightly, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry. I missed you, Dad. Leo whispered. I missed you too. So much. They sat on the bench together. Leo told him about school, about his friends, about a new video game he was playing. Ethan listened to every word, soaking it in. When it was time to go, Leo hugged him again. Will I see you next week? Leo asked. If you want to. I want to. Ethan watched them drive away, his chest full of something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. 2 months into sobriety, Ethan started taking on small freelance projects, just residential designs, small renovations, nothing big, but it felt good to work again, to create something, to use his hands and his mind for something other than drinking. He rented a small studio space and set up a drafting table. He spent his evenings sketching, losing himself in the work, and one evening, as he sat at his desk, he thought about the kid who'd saved him. Kai. He didn't know where he was, didn't know if he was okay, but he wanted to find him, wanted to thank him properly, wanted to do something to repay what the kid had done. Ethan picked up his phone and called the hospital. It took Ethan 3 days to find out where Kai's grandmother was staying. The hospital wouldn't give him information directly, privacy laws, but one of the nurses remembered the teenager who came every day to visit Maria Rivera on the 5th floor. Ethan went to the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon, carrying a folder under his arm. He found room 512. The door was half open. Inside, an elderly woman sat propped up in bed, watching a small television. She looked better than she had when Ethan had glimpsed her through the cafeteria window weeks ago, but still fragile. Ethan knocked softly on the door frame. Maria looked over. "Yes, Mrs. Rivera." She nodded cautiously. "Can I help you? My name is Ethan Hale. I think your grandson saved my life a couple months ago." Recognition flickered across her face. "Kai." "Yes, ma'am." She studied him for a moment, then gestured to the chair beside her bed. "Sit down." Ethan sat, setting the folder on his lap. "I wanted to thank him," Ethan said, "and to apologize. I wasn't myself that day. I wasn't in a good place. He told me about you," Maria said. "Said he pulled you out of a hot car. Said you almost died. I would've, if it wasn't for him." Maria's expression softened slightly. "That's Kai, always trying to help, even when it costs him." "I know," Ethan said quietly. "He told me I made him miss getting your medication, that you were in danger because of me." "The delay did cause problems," Maria said carefully, "but the doctors stabilized me. I'm doing better now." "I'm glad," Ethan said, "but I'm still responsible, and I want to make it right." "How?" Ethan opened the folder and pulled out several papers. "I've been sober for 2 months. I'm working again. Just small jobs, but it's something, and I want to help Kai. If he'll let me." He handed the papers to Maria. She read through them slowly. Her eyes widened. "This is a payment plan," she said. "For my medical bills. I can't cover everything right away," Ethan said, "but I can pay it off over the next year, and I want to cover your medications going forward. All of them." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you do this?" "Because Kai saved my life when I didn't deserve it, and then he showed me what it means to actually live it. This is the least I can do." Maria set the papers down and reached for Ethan's hand. "Thank you. There's more," Ethan said. "I'm opening a small design studio. I need help. Someone to organize files, manage materials, answer phones, basic stuff, but I'd pay him fairly. And if he's interested, I can teach him about architecture and design, maybe help him get into a training program eventually." Maria wiped her eyes. "He won't take it. He's too proud." "Then maybe you can convince him," Ethan said. "Tell him it's not charity. Tell him I genuinely need the help. And tell him I'm trying to become the person he saw in me that day in the parking lot." Kai was skeptical when his grandmother told him about Ethan's offer. "No," he said flatly. "I don't want his pity." "It's not pity," Maria insisted. "He needs help, and you need a real job." "I have a job." "Collecting cans isn't a job, baby. It's survival. This is a chance to build something, to learn something real." "What if he's only doing this because he feels guilty?" "Then let him feel guilty," Maria said. "But don't punish yourself because of it. This is an opportunity. Don't let your pride get in the way." Kai looked down at his hands, silent. "You're 17 years old," Maria continued. "You deserve more than scraping by. You deserve a future. This man is offering you one. Take it." Kai was quiet for a long time. Finally he sighed. "Fine, I'll meet with him, but if it's weird, I'm leaving." They met at Ethan's studio the following Saturday. The space was small but clean, with large windows overlooking the street. A drafting table sat in one corner, covered with sketches. Shelves lined the walls with design books and material samples. Ethan stood when Kai walked in. "Thanks for coming." Kai shrugged. "My grandma made me." Ethan smiled faintly. "Fair enough. Sit down." Kai sat on a stool near the drafting table, arms crossed. "I know you don't want to be here," Ethan said, "and I know you probably think I'm doing this out of guilt. You're right, I am. But I'm also doing it because I think you deserve a chance, and because I want to help." Kai didn't respond. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to let me try to do something good." Kai studied him for a moment. "What would I be doing?" "Organization, mostly. Keeping track of files and materials, answering phones, basic office work. But if you're interested, I can teach you about design. How to read blueprints, how to sketch, how to think about space." "How much does it pay?" $15 an hour to start, 25 hours a week. Kai did the math quickly. That was more than he made collecting cans in a month. "Okay," he said, "I'll try it." Ethan's face broke into a genuine smile. "Really? Yeah, but if you act like you're doing me some huge favor, I'm out." "Deal." The first few weeks were awkward. Kai showed up on time but kept to himself. He did the work, filing, organizing, running errands, but didn't say much. Ethan didn't push. He just let Kai get comfortable. Gradually things shifted. One afternoon, Ethan was sketching a kitchen renovation when Kai walked over. "What's that for?" "A client wants more counter space but doesn't want to knock down walls." Kai leaned over his shoulder. "Why not move the sink?" Ethan blinked. "What? The sink? If you move it to the island, you free up that whole wall for cabinets." Ethan stared at the sketch. "That actually works. Just an idea." From then on, Kai started paying more attention. He asked questions, offered suggestions, studied the designs. Ethan found himself teaching, explaining the principles of balance and function, and Kai absorbed everything. 6 months later, Ethan's studio was growing. He'd hired another employee and landed several bigger contracts, but Kai remained his right hand. One evening, after everyone else had left, Ethan and Kai sat at the drafting table reviewing a design. "You're good at this," Ethan said. Kai looked up, surprised. "At what?" "Design. Seeing how things fit together. You've got a natural eye for it." Kai shrugged, embarrassed. It makes sense to me." "Have you thought about going to school for it?" Kai laughed. "I can't afford that. There are scholarships, grants, and I'd write you a recommendation." Kai stared at him. "You'd do that?" "Of course." "Why?" "Because you've earned it. And because someone once told me that doing nothing when you can help is worse than being scared." Kai's throat tightened. "That sounds like something my grandma would say." Smart woman. A year after their first meeting, Ethan invited Kai and Maria to the opening of his new showroom. It was small but professional. Clean lines, modern furniture pieces, natural light streaming through large windows. Maria sat in a wheelchair near the entrance, beaming. Kai stood beside her in a button-down shirt. Ethan had helped him pick out. Ethan stood at the front of the room with a glass of sparkling cider. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming," Ethan said. "A year ago I was in a very dark place. I'd lost my business, my family, and almost my life, but I got a second chance. And I got it because of this young man right here." He gestured to Kai, who immediately looked uncomfortable. "Kai saved my life when I didn't deserve it," Ethan continued. "And then he showed me what it means to actually live it, to work hard, to care about something bigger than yourself. This showroom wouldn't exist without him. So this isn't just mine, it's ours." The room applauded. Kai's face turned red, but he was smiling. After the guests left, Ethan pulled Kai aside and handed him an envelope. Kai opened it. Inside was a letter of acceptance to the local community college's architecture program, and a check for the first year's tuition. "I can't," Kai started. "You can," Ethan said firmly, "and you will, because you're talented, and you deserve every opportunity." Kai stared at the letter, his hands shaking. "Thank you." "No, thank you." 2 years later, Ethan stood in his expanded studio. 5 employees now, projects across the city. Vanessa came by sometimes. They were taking it slow, rebuilding trust. Leo visited every weekend. In the corner, at a desk covered with blueprints, sat Kai, 20 years old now, finishing his second year of college, still working part-time at the studio. Kai looked up and caught Ethan's eye. He smiled. Ethan smiled back. He thought about that day in the parking lot, the heat, the darkness, the window shattering, how close he'd come to losing everything. And he thought about the boy who'd refused to let him die. Sometimes you save someone's life, and sometimes they save yours right back. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.